Right. Okay. So I think we can get started. If you do not forget, we started about talking about lists, and we all know that Python has many data structures like list, like dictionary, like sets, like tuples. And each of these data frame, each of these data structure is used for a particular purpose. So for example, last week we were discussing about list. So list is a kind of structure in which it allows you to store items that you intend to change the list or to update the list. But like you need some kind of security, you don't want to, your list of items need not to be updated, then you tuple. So if you need somehow a list in which you have a key value pairs, you can use dictionary. So all of these one, they do have their advantage in every scenario you want to use. So we are discussing list allow you that you can change. So in everyday life, we can store or anything and we can update the list. That's why list is very important in Python. So that's what we discuss, how you can access the list, how you can loop through the list. We also discuss how to avoid indentation error in Python. So in Python, always when you have, for example, for loop, the next thing must be indented. So if you look at them, we have for, then you must have this and you must indent it. Also, if you have if, then the next thing that comes must be indented. So we discussed this one last week. We also discussed about the range function. For example, given a function range 1 to 6, then it means this range will contains list of items from 1 to 6, because we discussed that one as well. And also we discussed using range to make a list. So what this means is that because range is called a lazy function in the sense as, let me give an example. Okay, let me give an example. This, so example, if I have this range 1, 2, so this is a range. And if I have this range, okay, let me put 10. This is a range. And as you can see, it does not return a list of numbers from 1, 2, 3, or 5, or up to 10. Range is a lazy function in the sense that it only stores the beginning and the end of lists. If you want to output the list of items inside the range, then you need to become like a list. Then you need to put something like this, range. So you are asking the range to give you the list that is inside between 1 to 10. So if we have something like this, it can give you something like this. So from 1 to 10. So that's why range is called a lazy function. You can see if you force it to list, then so we discard this one. And also at the range, if you can see, we have the starting and we have the last, where so it will start from 1, but here the ending 110, it will not count up to 10, it will stop at 9. So 10 is not inclusive. So that is how it is done. But if you look at the range, do the increment from 1 naturally. So 1, 2, 3. It means you can specify the step of increment, maybe let's say step at 2. So if you have a list start from 2, stop at 14, step is 14. So here it means it can start from 2 and it increment to 2, 2, 4, 6 up to the end. So we all discussed this one. I think, yeah, so that is about the last week. And we also discussed tuples. So tuples, they are used to store lists that you need not to change. So for security purpose, for example, you want to store list of passwords. So you don't need to store list of password in a list. You can store list of password, for example, for people that you know they are applying to your site or something like that in a tuple. So you can see, but list, you can see we define it with some kind of square bracket, but tuple is defined with this double braces. So you see, if we try to access it, we would get an error. So that is that about the list. So today, what we will discuss is what is called list comprehension. So one of the Python most beautiful features is list comprehension, which you can use to create powerful functionalities in Python. But list comprehension is used to create a list, but there are many other ways, as we have seen, to create a list. One way to create a list is using for loop, using map, and the last one, list comprehension. So before we look at this, creating a list using list comprehension, we'll look at how to create a list using for loops, using map, and then we will see the final one, which is list comprehension, which is the beautiful feature of Python that allows you to create a list. So let's look at the first one. Now, for you to create a list using for loop, there are 3 steps you need to do. The first one is to instantiate an empty list, 1. Number 2, loop over an iterable of orange element, then append each element to the end of the list. That is 3 ways to create a list using for loop. So let's look at it now. Create an empty list. Here is an empty list. It's called squared. So when we have this, this is an empty list. Remember, if I have this list contain A, this list, so list name called square contain 2 items A and B. What we want to do is create an empty list. So this create empty list. Create an empty list. Now loop over an iterable or range. So we can use for I in range squares dot append this. So look at it, loop over an iterable of range. So here we are looping. For I in range, this is telling us for each element in range. Remember range, and it has how many elements? 10 elements from 1 to 9, right? So for each element, what do we need to do? We have square, which is empty list. We have append. Append function add an element into the empty list. So here we have item I. So for the first one here in the range, we have 1, 2, 3 up to 9. So for the first element is so range, if you do not specify the starting or the only it starts from 0. Remember, start indexing from 0. So this range contains number from 1 up to 9. So this range contains numbers from 0 to 9. As I say, remember, range start indexing from 0. So here we say for I in range, that is the first one is 0. For 0 in range, square append 0 times 0. 0 times 0 is what? 0. So it will append the list to be 0. It will now go back. What is the next number? The next number is 1, right? So it will go back to 1 times 1 squared is also 1. It will output it. The next one is 2. 2 times 2, 4. Remember? And so this is how you can see we now print a list. This is a way to print a list using for loop. If you do not know for loop, it may look somehow complicated, but that is the beautiful idea of list comprehension that we will see. It actually makes this in such a high level that you don't need for loop. I don't know if you understand how for loop here works. If there's any question you can ask. So if you look at here, I put the range from 1 to 10. This will outform, let's run this one. Can you see 1 to last number here? So this is telling us it will start here. Remember here, yeah, so it will continue like this. For can you see just outputting the list of squares of number. You can see 1 square, 4, 9, 16. So this is how we use for loops. But the problem of for loops is memory consumption issue. with a for loop, you need to store the whole list in your system memory. So this means that when we create this code in memory now, and when I create the first loop, when I create the first one, append 1 square, it means I have a list which is 1 now. When I go to another loop, I have another list which included items 1, and the second one is 4. It means I'm storing this one as well. When I go to the next one, I have another 1, 4, and I have 9. So you can see this is storing, that is a memory issue, consumptions. That is one issue with for loop. Now to avoid that, another way to do that is called using map. So I don't know if you have question with the for loop before we continue with the map. Are we all okay with for loop? How it? So look at it. Create a loop in the for loop, instantiate an empty list. This is empty list. Look over an iterable or range. So range is an iterator. So it can be like a list. It can be like dictionary. It can be tuple, anything. So, but here is a list. When we say an iteratable, it means something that we can iterate. So for example, here we have, if we have a tuple, so this is an iterator. What do you mean by iterator? It means we can access the first one and we can access the next one. We can access them. That is called iteratable objects. So iteratable objects are like list, tuple, and yes. So let's go on if there is no question on how to create a list using for loop. So the next thing we can see is map. So we use map to create a list. But remember, here using for loop is somehow tedious. You need to create an empty list and you need to look over this. We can see here we append and something like this. So here we are creating the squares of, we have a number. This is a list. Remember, this is a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now here we say, okay, for num. So this num is anything that you need to define. I can say for X. This is not something, but what is naturally being done is if you have, for example, this is numbers, then you can say here, for example, for number. So this is to be a singular, this is plural. So for any number, numbers. This one is immaterial. Anything you can say this is X, we can call it like this. We can say numbers. We can see numbers. We can see number, it can give us the same result. What about if you say numbers? You see for numbers, that's what the same thing. So you can do what anything that you put here must be different from the thing. So yeah, so that is for loop. The for loop iterate over numbers and apply a power function. Finally, it's stored in the resultant value in squared. The solution to that, we can use map. So this is how map works. Instead for us to use this for loop and go through this iteration, we can have a function called map, and then we put a function here or any expression, then we put the iterative. Now let's get an example here. It's a function. Remember, this is how we define function in Python. Def, we say squared number, then return num times 2. This function basically get the squared, right? Get squares of number. Now, we have a number here. This is just a list with 1, 2, 4, 5. Now we want to use map to get the squared. So here what we can do is we say map, then we put the function that will apply to the iteratable. The name of our function, remember, is squared. So we put this function to the numbers. This function, what this function does, square, right? It will take the square of each number. It means now this function, square, it will apply to the first number, which is 1. It will apply the square to the second number, which is 2. It will apply the square to the second number, 3. And now it will output the result. But let's look at it. So look at, can you see that? But remember, you can see here, we can see the output is not a list. It's not a list. This means that return an object. Map, return an iteratable object. To coerce or to return a list from this, you need to, the call to map can use apply to square to all values in number and return an iteratable that into value. So we need to put this into list squared, then it will return us the list we have. So which is the same as what we have in the for loop here. Example of the for loop we have. Yeah. So clear output. Okay. Right. So I don't know if there is question. So that is how map works. You define your function or anything. Not okay. So here, rather than function, we can say maybe yeah, we can come to another example how you can understand it. Any question before you see? So in Python 2, map returns a list. So previously in Python 2, what map is a list, not an object. So if you are using map Python 2, then the result will always be a list. This behavior is changed in Python 3. Now map return a map object. So these squares you can see is a result of map return a map object, which is this is the map object, not a list. So for you to change it, you need to use the list to coerce it. So that is it. So let's look at another example of map. Let's assume this is a string of numbers. This is 4, 8. This is a string of numbers. And we want to change these strings to an integers, right? To integer. So what we mean, if you look at it in Python or any programming, anything that is put in double quote is we call it maybe string or some, yeah, string, you know. So we want to change it to integer. Here is that we say map int is, we want to apply int to each of these iteratable object. So therefore map applies int to every int in this stuff. So you can see here when we have this, when we wrote this, then because map returns a map object, we have a map. But for us to return a list, then we can put a list here. So this is how, yeah, I believe, yeah, if we have something like this, this is D, this is 3. If we have something like this in Python, so this is how in Python you can coerce, I mean, character. So here A is character, right? It's 3 character, but for us to coerce this to be an integer, that is a value, we provide this int function to this. So here we want to provide into all this list item, not only one. Can you see here we change one object here, but we want to change all the list item here. We have like 1 to maybe 10 items. So what we can do is, okay, we say map int, we provide a function that applies to a single object, then we put the list here. So this will change, and finally done that. Question before we proceed? Any question? Okay. So this is the same another example here, convert to floating point. So here we have float, and we have because this is not an integer, right? Because anything with a point in Python is floating, we call them floating point. So in Python, like 3 is called an integer, right? But 3.1 is called what? 3.2 is called floating point number. So if we want to convert those floating point numbers, which are in string, to floating point, because here they are not numbers, they are string, then we can pass map to this, and now we can concatenate here the result with the list. So here you can see in one step, we can perform everything. So the example there before we had, for example, of changing this, we can instead for us here, we can have something like this. We can call it list here to the function, and we can run it here like this. So can you see it give us a list of the numbers, right? So that is how the math works. Still, we are working, talking about the list. This one also convert to integer, as you can see, the same thing. And what about this one? Can somebody tell us how this will work? Can we guess, explain how this is working? So here we have a function. The function, what this function calculates, who can tell us? What this function calculates? You see this function, we have their powers, we have anything input, it returns x power 2 and x power 3, right? So this function return two objects. It returns squared and cube, right, of our input. Now, let's assume we have numbers, right? And these numbers are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we want to output this one. So here you can see we have this map powers. If you look at this one powers, what does it return? How many numbers does this powers return? 2 numbers, the squared and what? Cube. And now you put the object, which is this. So here, if you can see here, you can have this one, 1 to 1 for the first one, it return it. For the second one, which is 2, we can have 2 squared is 4, 2 power 3 is 8. And this is how you generate. So you can do a lot of things with map. So we can see now the advantage in which map has an advantage over 4 because you don't have many code. You can do many stuff in a single line, right? You can do everything in a single line without using to iterate using 4. So why map over for loop? So why do we need to even use map over for loop? So map function is written in C, and we all know C is highly optimized language, which is faster. I don't know in the world. I don't know on top of my head, but I know C. Anything that is fast in programming is implemented in C because C is somehow kind of close to the low-level language and is so faster. So Python, one of the many issues with Python is it is slow. It is so slow. But math is a function that is written in C and therefore can work faster than for loop. But for loop is just a mere Python code, so it is slower. So here, when we have map, when we look at the map, it's a C code. And also a map, as you can see, we do not actually store the list. We have, for example, as I gave example, when you are using for loop, at each step, for example, when here we have at each step, we need to store the value in a list. Then we iterate, we store the value, and the list continue to grow. So that's one advantage of for loop. But maps solve that issue in which now, but still there is now a Pythonic style that can be used in list. That using what is called list comprehension. So list comprehension allow us to use list, create lists using Pythonic style. When this called Pythonic, that is a preferable way to do some stuff in Python. Previously, we can see that we say, yes, math now has higher performance over the for loop, but now list comprehension becomes the I mean, what is everyone, you see, every Python code you see now, you see mostly list comprehension. So list comprehension is, we use also list comprehension not only for creating lists, but we can use also list comprehension for mapping and filtering, as we will see what that means. You don't have to use different approach for each scenario. So you see, given a list, we can filter a list based on some condition. For example, I can give a list from 1 to 10, and I can ask you, give me a list from this 1 to 10 that are odd number, or give me a list that are even number. Then that's why they say you can use list comprehension to do filtering. Can you see it? You can do filtering, as you see. You can also use map. So don't forget what we are discussing today, how you can create a list. The first way we saw is using for loop, but for loop is somehow a bit slower because it is implementation is in Python. Then it is code is somehow verbose, somehow difficult to comprehend for beginner. So we say, okay, let's use map. Maps allow us to create a list in a single line of code. And one advantage of map is that it is implemented in C. But the best way now to create a list is using list comprehension. Not only creating the list comprehension can be used to do other tasks like that, such as filtering and many other stuff, as we will see. Now, if you remember in list comprehension in map, this is how we create a list, right? We use map, the function, and then we put iteratable, right? This is it. Now, if we want to use list comprehension, what we can do is like, instead for us, this our function will be function, then for X in iteratable. So let's look at it, how that works. So here we have a function called square that create the square of numbers. So given a number, it will return the square of that number, right? If you look at this one here, we have number. So when we have this double asterisk, it means powers, right? In Python, it means number power 2, which it means squares. So here, let's look at it. So we have this function, and we have number, which is a list of number. This is just a list. Now, what we want to do now using map, remember, we want to return a list based on the list. Also, remember, map and for we create a list based on a list. List based on a list. So here we have a list of numbers, and we want to return another list that is squared of these list members. You get what I mean? We want to return another list that is a squared of this list. So what we can do with math, remember, we put the function that we want to apply, we want to put the iterable. The iterable here is number. So when we run this one, here it returns a list that are the squared of the particular list. But when we want to use list comprehension, this is the format. You put the function, you said for X in iterable. So this is what we mean. Square, this is the function, right? Square, right? For X in numbers, this X can be anything as well. Can you see? But here, remember, I say for X. So I can say for Y, square Y, for Y, can you see? In numbers. So this is telling you that square of Y, right? For Y in numbers. So in numbers, if you look at it one here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And here we said square Y for Y in numbers. It means it will return the square of numbers in numbers, the square of items in the list of numbers. So you can see here we have 14966. So you can see here this map we use a single line, also list comprehension we use a single line. Why do we need list comprehension? But list comprehension can do much more than that. It can do a lot of things, as we can see. It can filter, which maybe map cannot do, but list comprehension can do. So let's look at what is the structure of this list comprehension. So every list comprehension in Python includes 3 elements. Every list comprehension. The first thing is expression. If the number is the member list, so here we have expression, a call to a method, or any other valid expression that returns a value. Anything is not only necessary a function, anything that can return a value. It's the member itself, a call to a method, or any other. So here we can say for A, here I can say, okay, for A in numbers. A for A in numbers. So you can see here, I'm not applying any function, but here it will just return exactly the same list. So here we say the expression is the member itself. What do you mean member itself? That is the member of the original list. The original list is 1, 2, 3 up to 6. So member, so the expression can be member itself, a call to a method. That is the previous. So here it means a member. It means here I say A means any item for A in number. So that is any item. But what about the second one? We can have a function. So here a call to a method. You can see here this expression is a call to a method or any other valid expression. We can also put here any other valid expression. Maybe I can see 1 plus 1. Can you see 1 plus 1? It's a valid expression, right? So let's run this. Can you see it? 1 plus 1 is what? 2, right? So and we have only 1, 2 here, right? So here it means it will check here and say, is there any, the first thing it will check is that 1 plus 1 is 2. Is there any 2 in the list? It will say yes, it will return. It will go to the next one, out to the number of items in the list. So this is how the list comprehension works. Remember, if the object or value in the list iterable. So here we said member for member. So if the member of if the object or value in the list iterable, then iteratable. So here the last one, it must be a list. When we say iterable, it's a list, set, sequence, generator, or any other object that can return element one at a time. So this is how the list comprehension works. So let's look at more examples so that we can actually build the understanding much better. Now, I want to return a squares of numbers. Remember, using for loop, how do we do that? Here we set any expression. You can see I times I for I in range of this. This is telling us I times I is expression for I. That is for any number inside this, return it is multiple I by I. It is what squares, right? Not squares, multiplication, right? I by I. So let's look at this one. I'm talking about multiplication is squared because we are using the same number. Sorry. Yeah. So for any number inside this range, remember range we have numbers. The range inside range here we have numbers from 0 to what 9, right? Because range start from 0 and to 9. We don't include the last one. So for any number inside this returns each square. So you can see this one is more easily cognitive understanding on how it works. This is much better than for loop. So how can we write for loop for this one? Who can give us help us to write for loop for to create a space? We wrote it at the top. Who can help us? Can have type, okay, without even function. In range, what can we do here? What can we return?
Return I star star I asterisk 2.
Okay. So we said I times I times I.
Then asterisk 2 asterisks.
Like this.
Then 2.
Okay, 2. We say 2, something like this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So is it? What is the meaning of this?
That's I squared, sir.
Okay, that's I squared, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we run it, what will it give us? We have an error. What is it?
We have not called the function, have we?
Where? So this doesn't work. What is the problem? Remember, we defined it exactly previously. Who can tell us? Look at the syntax error, return outside function. Okay, so what about this? We have it exactly. Who can help us? We have it exactly.
Oh, sir, can we put brackets around it?
This will not solve the problem. You mean like this? No.
Yes, sir, let's try it that way.
No, this is not it. We do it exactly. Nobody can help?
So the syntax is square.append. Then we put the
right.
range.
Yes, exactly. So you can see, if you remember, he exactly tells. I pointed out the list, the step that you can, because we are here adding members to a list, right? So we need to use append. Append is a function which add item to the list, right? So let me show you the steps we highlighted here. Yeah, look at it. Append, can you see it? Can you see it? Append each element to the end of the list. So if we want to create a new list, we need to use this append to the list. So here for I in the range here, and yeah, so even you can actually do not create anything. So let's copy this and show you what I'm saying there. Okay, so here, look at what I'm saying. So you don't need. So let's assume you don't have an empty. You don't have a. Okay, the best way to understand it is just to go through this way. I don't want to complete it without this, since we outlined those steps. So you can see the point I want to show you. It just says, look at this one. We do it in one line, right? Look at this one. In how many lines have we done it? Can you see it? So you can see list comprehension is so beautiful that you can actually do something in a single line of line. So you can see the cognitive load of using for loop and using square and using the list comprehension. Okay, let's. Is that okay? Anyone with other question before we proceed? I just want to show you, compare you with the for loop and the using list comprehension. Before we proceed, any question? Okay. So as I told you here, now list comprehension is used to create a list from another given list, right? So you can see here, we create a list. So here, this whole squared. These are lists. Can you see? Can you see? We create another list. And what the list? Because range is giving a list of 1 to 9, right? But one way list comprehension outstand from using map or follow and use some kind of conditional logic with it. So let's look at it. A more complete description of the comprehension list adds support for optional conditionals. So previously, as you can see here, we said, okay, this is our formula for list comprehension. How can you do it? Expression for members in iteratable. This is how we define it. And this is, we say, this is the expression for I in this iteratable. But we can do much more than that. This is how it is. Expression for member in iteratable if condition. So this means that we can filter out results. We can filter out results based on condition. You can see here, we don't filter out. We applied this function to everything inside this list, right? But what about if I want to say, no, don't return everything. What I want is that return maybe the square in this if it is less than 50. If it is less than 50, that means I don't want to return 64 and 81. Logic inside list comprehension. So here I can say if, not that one, I can say, okay, if the result is less than 50, that is what I want to show you. So this is how it works. So this is the condition, if condition. So let's look at example here. Okay, then you can. Okay, so look at this. This is an example. I have a sentence that contains this a single, the rocket back from the Mars. Now I say, okay, I want to extract vowels from this sentence. What I can do is I say, I remember here, this is our expression, right? And we said expression can be any term from your list. Then I here means anything inside this string. For I in sentence, then anything in this sentence return if I is in this. Look at it. This is called, this in is called membership operator in Python. So Python is somehow intuitive. In is called membership operator. So here we are saying, okay, I for I in sentence. Remember, this is the previous where we said you can define list comprehension, right? But now we add condition that you want to filter out the result. So here I for I. So let's remove this one. Let's remove this. Let's remove this. So I for I in sentence, look at what is returning. The T, H, E. Can you see it? It's returning what? Everything, because we say I for I in sentence means this is the first one, T, the second one is H, because the third one is returning everything. But we don't want everything. We want to filter out stuff that we are interested, which are only what? Vowels. In that case, we can do something like this. We can put if I, that is the element we are, is inside. If you do this, you can see it returns only the vowels inside the sentence. This way, we use comprehension to do filtering. For you to do filtering, you put the condition at the end, not here, maybe here. No,
You put the condition at this end, at this side. Can you see that? So that is how you do filtering. You can place the conditional at the end of the statement for simple filtering. So you can see for filtering, we can put here. We can see another case where it's not for filtering, we can put it here. So what if you want to change the member value instead of filtering out? It is usable to place the condition near the beginning of the expression. This example is used for filtering members of the list. That is, we put it at the end. But what if we want to change the member of the list? So for example, if this is T, I don't want for any T in the list, I want to change it to A before I work on it. It means you want to change the member of the list before. In that case, you put your condition at the beginning. So this is how we do it in that case. You put your expression, when you put your expression, then you put your condition, then you do your for member in isolation. Let's look at an example. Suppose you have a list of prices and you want to replace negative price with 0 and leave the positive values unchanged. This means that we want to change the item. Remember two things. List comprehension can be used for filtering, and it can be used to change the members in the list. The example here we saw, to filter the list, we use condition at the end. Now, the next example we will see is to change the element of the list, but the condition will come immediately after our what? Expression. So here we have a list of prices. Now we say I, but we don't want to input any I, we want to change it. If I is greater than 0, else 0. This is else statement. So this is if else statement in Python. I don't know if, so let me show you this. Okay. So if I have something like this, let's assume I have okay, let me just don't worry about that. I believe you know if else because our if condition is I believe you all know what if, right? Does anybody don't know what if condition means? So here we want to change if the content in the list is negative, we want to change it to 0. So if I is greater than 0, that is okay. Then do that for if it is okay. But else change it to what? 0. So this is a condition. If our content of the list is greater than 0, then do for continue here. But else change that negative number to 0. So here, if we run this, we can see the first element here is minus 9.1, it turns 0. The last one here is turns 0. Can you see that? So this is two scenarios in which list comprehension is so powerful in the sense that it is even more advantageous to use a map or follow. So you see, this one using this if else here, we can write it alternatively using get price. We can write a function here, get price, right? Return price. But if price is greater than 0, return it, else return 0. So here we wrote a function separately, we'll get price, and now here we pass the function inside the for iterator. Can you see that? So here we remember we go back to the last expression in which we can say, yeah, we can have a function at the beginning, then we have this. So this list function comprehension. Any question before we continue? And who can of this one? What will be the output of this one? Who can output of this one? What will be the output of this? X for X in the range of 20 if X modulo 2 is equals to 0. What will be the output of this? Who can give us an answer?
I think it will give us even numbers.
Okay, all right, good. So Bilki said that this will give us an even number. So this is modulo operator. A modulo operator checks if, so here we want to, so in this case, you can see a list comprehension with condition, right? Which condition are we filtering here, or we are changing the content of the list? What are we doing?
Filtering.
Filtering, right? Yeah. So what kind of filtering are we doing? X will 2 equals 0. So it means if division by 2 is equals 0, for example, 4 divided by 2 is 0, right?
If the remainder,
If not division, I mean modulo operator. If there is no remainder in it,
yes.
we all know modulo operator. So like 4 modulo 2 is this 0 for modulo 2?
X is 0.
4 modulo 2. 4 modulo 2. What is the answer for this one?
0.
Is 0, right? Okay. What
Yes.
about 5 modulo 2?
1.
Is it 0?
1.
5 modulo 2
Is 1.
It's 1. It's 1.
Hello?
It's
One.
1.
5 modulo 2. Is it 0?
Is
No,
1.
1.
Yes, it's 1.
One.
So yeah,
Yes.
good. So you all know what modulo means. So in that case, since we all know what modulo is 1. So in this case here, when we run this, it will run can you see them? Even numbers. Can you see them? Can you see them? So this is it. We have 2 minutes, 5 minutes. So let's look at 2 variants of using list comp. So there is also nested if with the list comprehension. Now, y for y in range of 100, if y modulo 2 is 0, if y modulo 5 is 0. So what will this return? Tell us. Who can tell us what will this return? If y modulo 2 is 0 and if y modulo 5 is 0. So this is telling us this is nested if. So it's y must satisfy 2 conditions. For example, 10 modulo 2, is it 0? 10 modulo 2
0.
is 0, right?
Yes.
What about 10 modulo 5? Is it 0?
It's also 0.
It's also
Right.
0.
So we want to filter only those numbers inside this. So you can see you are using nested if in list comprehension. Are we using filtering or we are using changing the list? What are we doing here?
It's filtering.
We're filtering.
We are filtering. So exactly. So here you can see, look at the numbers. Can you see it? Isn't this is beautiful list component? So it has many features that you can. Here, y must satisfy both conditions. Y is appended to number list. You can see it. And lastly, if else with list comprehension. That is what we saw previously. You can see here. So here we say even if I modulo 2 is equal to 0, else odd. So here we have if else. So if else allow us to return 2 conditions. If something satisfies, it gives us something. If it doesn't satisfy, it gives. So this is telling you that, but this is we haven't done if in Python, but next week. So this what this is telling us that if I modulo 2 is 0, return even, else return odd. So this is if else statement. I know if you did programming language, you will have the idea is this. If I modulo is 0, return something in the left hand side. If it's not equal to 0, return this. So for I in the range of this in 10, bring the object here. So here we can see already the first one 0. So in the range of range of 10, we have a list which are what 0
0, 0,
to 9,
To 9.
right?
0 to 9. Yeah.
Yeah, 0, 1, 2, 3,
2,
right?
3.
Up to 9, right? So what
Yep.
is the first one, even or odd? Is 0 even or odd?
Even.
Right. Are you sure mathematician here can answer us? 0 is even or what?
0 is even.
Even.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Is
So yeah. So 1 is odd. So here you can see that it is telling us that if this certain criteria, and so this we have. So this is powerful feature of list that is used in every when you start doing machine learning, you see list comprehension everywhere. I tell you that everywhere you go, you see list comprehension. So that's why I take time to discuss because the book discuss a bit about the list, but I take go further to prepare how the list works. So we can see that list comprehension is an elegant way to define and create lists based on existing lists. Remember, to create lists based on existing lists. It is also list comprehension generally more compact and faster than normal functions and loops for creating lists. However, we should avoid writing very long list comprehension in one line to ensure that code is user-friendly. So if you have, for example, you have 10 conditions here, condition 1, 2, it can start, so it will be like length that it must, and it will not be somehow readable. Every list comprehension can be written in for loop. Remember there, I showed you how we can write a list comprehension for squares of numbers, but every for loop can't be written in the form of list comprehension. So this is the idea of comprehension. On top of that, we have seen that list comprehension can be used to filter elements in the list. List comprehension can be used to modify change elements in the list, and much more than that. So I think we are on top of our 15 hours now. 3 o'clock, we spend an hour. Yeah, so any question before we close for today, and we can meet tomorrow to discuss the next chapter of the book. Yeah, any question? And any question?
Yeah, sorry, please. Please, can we have the recording session for this particular lesson?
What this notebook?
Yes. I mean this particular presentation, the recorded one. Can you help post it, please?
Let me see. Am I recording it? Is it recording or not?
Yeah, it is.
Eh?
It
is
is.
recording?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So I can, okay, I can, yeah, sure, why not? I can post the recording as well.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
even the next last week one, I will post the recording.
Okay.
Any
Thank you.
question?
Please, is there class tomorrow?
Yes, the same time.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. So I want to ask, how far have you been with the Coursera courses? The Python we have. You guys, are you following the course or not?
I've actually done week 1 and 2. I mean week 3.
No, excellent. Who is that?
Mustafa.
Nice, good. Good. So please try to see that you actually, because it will just give you us with how the Python works, so that we'll not have much problem when we come to the machine learning. So I believe maybe in the next 3 weeks we'll be able to wrap up this introductory. Oh, we have much more 3 weeks, because we will show you how to use pandas. We will have a session on NumPy. We will have a session on how to use GitHub. We will have a session on how to use command line like terminals. So we have many things as well. So for example, now, what I mean by terminal, maybe some of you might not know. Okay. So what I mean by that is space. So here, for example, what do we mean by that? In machine learning, or in general, you need to be familiar with something, how you can do like this, go to this. This is what we call terminal, right? So you need to be familiar, like how can you, I want to go to my document. This is list item. If I say CD, this means this is change working directory to go to another directory. I am now in the directory called document. We can also have another thing like what are inside my document directory, this directly. So you can see the list of everything inside. So instead for you to go to my document, click among these terminals allows you to go to many things inside your. So we will have a separate session to show you how you can actually use command line to navigate, and we'll have another to use GitHub. So I think we have some other ways to cover up, but I think the most important thing is Python, which we need to have a very understanding of. Okay, so any question again?
Yes. Does it mean that every week we have classes Saturdays and Sundays?
Yes. Just yeah, just so when I start this. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
At the
Thank you.
end of the Coursera course, would there be a certificate?
Yes. Yes. So at the end of the course, Coursera, you will be given certificate by Google. So when you finish the Coursera, you will receive certificate from Google and Coursera.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any question again? All right. So if you are here and you don't know, I haven't given you an access to Google Coursera course, you can give me your email down there, and I can send you an email. I can invite you to go through the course. So the aim here, why we are doing this Python, is just to refresh. Most of us, we have some kind of basic program background, but we are just refreshing because some have been using Java or something like that. Some they have not even have Python. We are refreshing our Python skills so that we can quickly start the machine learning. So please bear with us if you are here for machine learning. We started with Python, and starting the Python is because when we run the survey, we have like more than 75% of the participants don't know Python. So that's why we said, okay, let's revise our Python before we venture into the machine learning. And I hope, and I'm sure we will enjoy our machine learning course when we come to it. All right, any question again? Right. No question? Okay. So if there is no question, we see tomorrow.
So we have sent our emails for the Coursera link or something like that.
Okay. So for Coursera course, right?
Yes.
Okay. Drop the email inside the Slack community or inside the Slack, or via you can private send me Slack message with your email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Send me via the Slack the email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please, and please, if you have been added, try to finish the Coursera course. It's very simple. Just 1 week. I mean, weekly you can just look at it. It's very nice course. Try to finish it, and you will really appreciate it. Mustafa, how far do you see the course? Because you are finished, you say week 1 and 2. How do you see it?
It's interesting.
Okay. Right.
It's interesting. Like it's refreshing.
Okay.
The videos are all okay. Yes.
Okay. Right. So okay. So thank you very much. We meet next tomorrow. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Cheers.